All right, get ready because today we're going deep into a world where, well, let's just say the lines between pain and enlightenment get pretty blurry.
Yeah, you could say that.
What if I told you there are people out there who actually use pain as like a tool to become more spiritually enlightened?
That's right. We're
Hmm.
diving deep into the world of sadhus, these Hindu
Hmm.
ascetics who have dedicated their lives to spiritual liberation,
Okay, I'm intrigued already.
often through some pretty intense practices.
Intense in what way?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
But first,
Yeah.
who are these sadhus?
Yeah, are we talking like monks living in monasteries or?
Not exactly.
Okay.
They're more like wandering ascetics, I guess you could say.
Okay.
So they renounce all their worldly possessions and dedicate their lives to achieving moksha,
Moksha.
which is basically liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth.
Okay.
They believe that by detaching from the material world, including like their own bodies even,
Wow.
they can ultimately achieve a state of pure bliss and union with the divine.
Wow. Giving up everything and just wandering around.
Yeah.
That's commitment.
It's a big commitment.
But you mentioned intense practices.
Right.
What exactly do they do?
Well, imagine this.
Yeah.
Walking across burning hot coals, barefoot,
Oh, wow.
holding your arm above your head for years, literally years,
Why?
or even piercing your body with needles as like an offering.
Hold on, needles.
Yeah.
That sounds a little extreme.
It can be pretty intense.
Is this like a masochistic thing?
No, not at all.
But-
Remember, their goal is to transcend the physical.
Okay.
To them, pain is just another sensation, just an illusion that they need to overcome to reach a higher state of consciousness.
So it's all about breaking free from the chains of the material world.
Exactly.
Okay, so like I kind of get the detaching from material possessions thing,
Sure.
but detaching from your body's pain,
Yeah.
it just seems impossible.
That's where the really fascinating part comes in. So through intense meditation and mental discipline, they actually train their minds to perceive pain differently.
Really?
Yeah, they practice something called tapas,
Kapas.
which translates to heat or austerity.
Okay.
And they believe that by enduring hardship, they purify their minds and their bodies.
So it's more about mental strength than physical endurance.
Exactly. They're kind of like rewiring their perception of pain, training their minds to see it not as something to be feared, but as a stepping stone on their spiritual journey.
Okay, I see. It's like an athlete pushing through the pain barrier
Yeah, you could say that.
to reach a new level of performance.
Exactly.
So are there like different types of sadhus,
Yes.
or are they all doing these, extreme things?
Yeah, so there are many different sects and orders within the sadhu tradition. For example, you have the Nagas, who are known for their warrior-like asceticism,
Okay.
and their very public displays of self-mortification.
Nagas, like the mystical serpent creatures?
That's right. They often wear minimal clothing
Oh.
and cover their bodies in ash.
Oh, wow.
It symbolizes their renunciation of the material world.
Interesting.
They see themselves as spiritual warriors, constantly battling their inner demons.
So walking on hot coals is like a test of their willpower.
Yeah, like a test of their devotion.
So are all sadhus as extreme as the Nagas then?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Some sadhus focus on quieter forms of tapas, you could say, like long periods of meditation and silence, extreme fasting, or even pilgrimages to sacred sites.
Yeah, those pilgrimages can be pretty intense.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm thinking of the Kailash sadhus who journey to Mount Kailash in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
That's not exactly a walk in the park.
No, it's considered one of the most challenging pilgrimages in the world.
Wow.
They believe it brings them closer to Shiva,
Okay.
one of the most important deities in Hinduism. These journeys are all about pushing their physical limits and testing their faith.
It's like a physical manifestation of their inner struggle. So how do they even, begin to prepare for this kind of life? I mean, how do you go from living a normal life to walking on hot coals?
It's a gradual process.
Right.
It involves years of intense training and discipline.
Yeah.
They often have gurus
Okay.
who guide them and teach them specific techniques,
Hmm.
but it all starts with the mind.
Okay, so let's unpack this mental training.
Okay.
How do they actually learn to detach from pain?
Well, meditation is a huge part of it.
Okay.
Through deep meditation, they can achieve altered states of consciousness where they can control their breathing, their heart rate, even their perception of pain.
Wow.
They learn to observe sensations without judgment, to see pain as simply a temporary, fleeting experience.
So it's like mindfulness, but on a whole other level.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They become masters of their own minds.
Hmm.
But it's not just about meditation.
Okay.
Many sadhus also practice yoga, breath work, chanting,
Okay.
all of which help them cultivate focus and mental clarity. They believe that by calming the mind, they can transcend the limitations of the body.
It's pretty amazing what the human mind is capable of.
It really is.
But it still seems a bit unbelievable.
Yeah.
Are there any, like, scientific explanations for how they can withstand so much pain?
Well, there's definitely a lot that science is still figuring out
Yeah.
about the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
But some research suggests that practices like meditation
Hmm.
can actually alter brain activity.
Really?
Yeah, reducing the perception of pain.
Wow.
It's like they're training their brains to downplay pain signals.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So it's not just some, like, mystical mumbo-jumbo.
Right.
There might be real, tangible changes happening in their brains.
That's what the research suggests.
Wow. So if they can rewire their brains to deal with pain, what does that mean for us?
Yeah.
Could we learn from their techniques
Maybe.
to manage our own pain and suffering?
It's a good question.
It is a good question.
Something to think about.
All right, that is one mind-blowing question.
For sure.
So we've talked about the who and the how,
Yeah.
but what about the why?
Why?
What's the ultimate goal of all this pain and hardship?
That's where things get even deeper.
Okay.
Because it's not just about physical endurance. It's about a profound shift in their entire worldview.
Okay, I am officially hooked.
Great.
Tell me more.
All right.
So we've talked about how these sadhus, they push their bodies and minds to the absolute limit.
Right.
But what is the, like, deeper spiritual purpose behind all of this? It
Yeah.
can't just be about showing off how much pain they can handle, right?
You're right. It's not about showing off at all.
Yeah.
The physical feats are really just a manifestation of a much deeper spiritual journey.
Okay.
It's about breaking free from this cycle of samsara.
Gamsaras.
Yeah, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth.
Okay, I've heard that word before, but
Yeah.
can you break that down a bit more for me?
Sure. Imagine it like we're all caught in this web of desires,
Mhm.
attachments, and aversions. We crave pleasure. We try to avoid pain.
Yeah.
And this constant like push and pull, it keeps us trapped in this cycle of suffering.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So the sadhus are trying to, like, break free from that cycle.
Exactly.
Okay.
They believe that by renouncing all those worldly attachments, even the attachment to their own bodies,
Wow.
they can finally achieve true liberation.
And that's where these extreme practices come in.
Exactly. They're a key part of it.
Okay, so I get that they're trying to detach from, like, material possessions and stuff.
Yeah.
But how does enduring pain fit into all of this?
Well, remember tapas?
Yeah, the heat.
Yes, the heat, austerity.
Yeah.
It's not just about physical hardship, though. It's
Right.
about cultivating this state of inner fire. This burning desire for spiritual liberation that's so strong, it overpowers all other desires.
Including the desire to avoid pain.
Exactly.
So pain becomes almost like a fuel
Yeah, you could say that.
for their spiritual journey.
Right. By embracing pain and discomfort,
Yeah.
they're proving to themselves that they're no longer slaves to their physical sensations.
Okay.
They're showing their spirit is stronger than their body.
That's a powerful idea.
It is.
But isn't there a risk of taking things too far?
Yeah,
I mean, some of these practices seem, I don't know,
right.
downright dangerous.
You're right. There's definitely a fine line there.
Okay.
And it's important to remember that not all sadhus agree on how far to push these practices.
Oh.
Some believe in moderation, while others really embrace those more extreme forms of asceticism.
So there's a spectrum of beliefs even within the sadhu tradition.
Absolutely. It's not a monolithic group. There are many different paths and lineages, each with their own interpretations and practices. But that underlying goal is always the same. It's liberation from suffering.
It seems like such a radical concept.
Yeah.
Renouncing everything,
Yeah.
including your own comfort and well-being.
It's not an easy path, that's for sure.
I can't imagine giving up all the things that bring me joy and pleasure.
It's definitely a challenging path, no doubt about it. And it's
Yeah.
not for everyone.
Okay.
But the sadhus believe that the rewards are worth the sacrifice. They're not seeking worldly happiness,
Okay.
but something far more profound, lasting peace, bliss, and union with the divine.
So they're essentially trading temporary pleasures for, like, eternal bliss.
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
Wow.
They believe that true happiness isn't found in those external things,
Mm.
but within ourselves.
Yeah.
And that path to that inner peace lies in detaching from everything that kind of binds us to the material world.
It's almost like they're trying to transcend the human experience altogether.
In a way, yes.
Oh.
They're trying to access a realm of consciousness that's beyond those limitations of the ego, the mind and the body.
Okay, I think I'm starting to understand the appeal.
Yeah.
Even if I don't know if I could ever do it myself.
Right.
But how do they actually measure their progress on this path? I mean, how do they know if they're getting closer to this liberation?
Well, there's no, like, single answer to that question. It's a very personal and subjective journey.
Yeah.
But there are certain signs and stages of spiritual development that they look for.
Okay, like what?
Well, for example, they might experience increased levels of compassion, detachment, inner peace, or maybe even some intuitive insights.
So it's more about inner transformation
Exactly.
than outward achievements.
It's about purifying the mind and heart, cultivating wisdom and virtue.
Okay.
They believe that as they progress on their path, their actions and interactions with the world will naturally kind of reflect their inner state.
That's fascinating.
It is.
But it also raises some questions for me.
Sure.
Like, how does this philosophy of renunciation actually play out in their daily lives?
Right.
I mean, they can't just detach from everything completely, right?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, because even though they renounce all those worldly possessions, they still have to interact with society in some way. And that can be a source of great tension.
So they have to find a balance between detachment
Yes.
and engaging with the world.
Exactly. Precisely. That's one of the ongoing challenges of the sadhu path.
Okay.
So they might rely on the generosity of others for, like, food and shelter.
Yeah.
But they also have to be careful not to become attached to those who support them.
Oh, right.
It's a delicate dance
Wow.
between accepting help and maintaining their independence.
It sounds incredibly difficult.
It can be, it is.
So they're basically walking a tightrope between two worlds.
You could say that they're living in the world, but not of it. And that requires constant awareness and vigilance to avoid getting caught up in that, web of desires and attachments that they're trying to escape.
It all sounds very philosophical and abstract.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how does this philosophy actually translate into concrete actions and behaviors? Do they have any, like, specific rituals or practices that help them cultivate this detachment?
Yes, absolutely. They have a rich tradition of practices and rituals that are designed to help them purify their minds and hearts and to strengthen their resolve. For example, many sadhus engage in daily chanting and meditation, often for hours at a time.
Wow.
These practices help them to cultivate focus, clarity, and inner peace. They also help them to connect with the divine and to kind of deepen their understanding of spiritual truths.
So it's not just about enduring pain.
Right.
It's also about actively cultivating those positive qualities.
Exactly.
Okay.
They see suffering as an inevitable part of life.
Yeah.
But they don't believe that we have to be consumed by it.
Okay.
They believe that through practice and discipline, we can train our minds to find peace and contentment, even in the midst of difficult circumstances.
It's starting to sound like a lot of what they're doing aligns with, modern psychology and mindfulness practices.
You're right. There are definitely some parallels there.
Yeah.
But the sadhu tradition goes back thousands of years. Wow.
And they have developed some incredibly sophisticated techniques for working with the mind.
Okay.
One interesting practice is the use of mantras.
Oh, I've heard of mantras. Those are like the sacred sounds or phrases that you repeat.
That's right.
Yeah.
They believe that mantras have a powerful vibratory energy that can help to purify the mind and to awaken spiritual awareness.
Okay.
They might chant a specific mantra for hours on end, focusing their attention on the sound and its meaning.
So it's another way of training the mind to detach from, like, distracting thoughts and sensations.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a single-pointed focus, which helps to quiet the chatter of the mind and to open up to deeper levels of consciousness.
Okay. And speaking of quieting the mind,
Yes.
another important practice for sadhus is
Silence.
Silence.
Yeah.
Like actually not talking
Yes.
for how long?
Some sadhus will take vows of silence for extended periods, sometimes even years.
Years of silence. Yes. They believe that by refraining from speech, they can conserve their energy and direct it inwards towards spiritual contemplation.
Wow, that takes some serious discipline.
It does.
I can barely stay quiet for like 5 minutes.
Right. But I guess that's the point, right?
Yeah.
It's all about pushing yourself beyond that comfort zone.
Exactly.
It's about breaking down those barriers of the ego and the limitations of the conditioned mind. It's about accessing a deeper level of awareness that lies beyond the realm of thoughts and words.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
All this talk about silence and detachment is making me wonder, though.
Yeah.
Do sadhus ever interact with the world at all?
Right?
Do they have any social connections or relationships?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's actually one of the most controversial aspects of the sadhu tradition.
Really? Why?
Because while they strive for detachment,
Yeah.
they also recognize the importance of compassion and service to others.
So it's not just about withdrawing from the world and focusing solely on their own liberation.
Not necessarily.
Right.
Many sadhus believe that their spiritual practice should benefit all beings, not just themselves. They might offer teachings, blessings, or even like practical help to those in need.
So they're trying to find a balance between their own spiritual aspirations and their responsibilities to the world.
Exactly. Precisely. It's a delicate balance. And it's one that's constantly being negotiated and redefined by individual sadhus and within those different sadhu lineages. But at the heart of it all is that recognition.
Yeah.
That true liberation is not just about personal enlightenment, but about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things.
That's a beautiful idea.
It is.
So even though they renounce those worldly attachments, they're still connected to the world through this compassion and service.
Precisely. It's a paradox, but a beautiful one.
Yeah.
They're striving to transcend those limitations of the ego while simultaneously recognizing the inherent unity of all beings.
That's really thought-provoking.
It is.
It makes me think about how often we get caught up in our own little worlds, our own desires and fears.
Yeah.
And we kind of forget about the bigger picture.
That's the danger of the ego, isn't it? It can create that sense of separation and isolation. But the sadhus, they remind us that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And that recognition can be a source of great peace and liberation.
Speaking of liberation.
Yeah.
Do sadhus ever actually achieve it? Like, do they ever reach that ultimate state of moksha that they're striving for?
Well, that's a question that has been debated for centuries.
Okay.
Some believe that moksha is a state that can be attained in this lifetime, while others believe that it's a gradual process that might take many lifetimes to achieve.
So there's no clear consensus?
Not really. It's a mystery in many ways.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's part of the appeal.
Yeah.
The pursuit of liberation is a journey, not a destination. And it's a journey that requires faith, dedication, and a willingness to kind of surrender to the unknown.
It sounds like a pretty intense journey.
It is.
To say the least.
It's not for the faint of heart.
But it's also incredibly inspiring.
It is.
Just the fact that these sadhus are willing to dedicate their lives to this pursuit, to face so much hardship and uncertainty.
Right.
It speaks volumes about the power of the human spirit.
Absolutely. They remind us that we're capable of so much more than we often realize. They challenge us to question our assumptions about what's possible and to explore the depths of our own potential.
It's definitely making me think about my own life, my own values, what I'm truly striving for.
That's the beauty of exploring those different spiritual traditions, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can help us to see the world from a new perspective and to challenge our own beliefs and assumptions.
Speaking of different perspectives,
right?
I know that not everyone views these practices in a positive light. There are definitely some criticisms and controversies surrounding the sadhu tradition, right?
That's right. And it's important to acknowledge those different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Some people see these practices as extreme, unhealthy, or even exploitative.
Yeah. I can see how someone from like a Western perspective might find some of these practices, shocking or even disturbing.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to approach these traditions with sensitivity and respect.
Yeah.
Recognizing that our own cultural lens can shape our understanding.
Okay. So how do we reconcile those different viewpoints? Is there a way to appreciate the spiritual aspirations of the sadhus while also acknowledging the potential downsides of some of their practices?
I think it comes down to recognizing the complexity and the nuance of this tradition.
No.
It's not a black and white issue.
Okay.
There are many different perspectives and interpretations, even within the Sadhu community itself. And it's important to engage in open-minded dialogue and to avoid making generalizations or judgments.
It's a reminder that we should always be questioning.
Yes.
Always be learning and always be open to new ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. And that's what makes these deep dives so valuable.
Yeah.
They challenge us to step outside of our comfort zones and to explore that richness and diversity of human experience.
So we've explored the ancient roots of the Sadhu tradition.
Yeah.
Their philosophy of renunciation, their like mind-boggling practices,
Right.
even some of the criticisms they face.
Right.
But it makes me wonder,
Yeah.
where does this tradition stand in the modern world?
Right.
Are there still sadhus practicing these ancient ways today?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the fascinating evolution of the Sadhu tradition in modern times.
Okay.
Because while their ancient practices continue, they're also navigating the complexities of a rapidly changing world.
Okay, I'm curious to hear more about this.
Yeah.
How has the sadhu tradition adapted to the modern world? Have they changed their practices at all?
Well, that's what we'll explore next. Because the story of the sadhus is not just a historical artifact, it's a living, breathing tradition that continues to evolve.
Yeah.
And to challenge us to rethink our own assumptions about the nature of spirituality,
Yeah.
suffering, and liberation.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into the modern sadhu world.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so we've been on this journey, exploring the world of the sadhus.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
From their ancient roots to these, like, mind-bending practices they do.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, are there still sadhus practicing these ancient ways today? Or is this all, like, a relic of the past?
It's definitely not a thing of the past.
Okay.
The Sadhu tradition is very much alive, even thriving. But like everything else, it's had to adapt to the changing times.
Yeah, that's true.
Imagine a sadhu wandering through like bustling city streets instead of a serene forest.
Yeah.
It's a very different world out there.
That's a striking image, a sadhu with like a smartphone walking down the street. So how are these, I guess you could call them modern-day sadhus?
Yeah.
How are they navigating a world of smartphones and social media and all that?
Well, it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
Some sadhus choose to remain completely isolated, upholding the traditional ways, you know, in remote caves or ashrams.
Yeah.
They really see technology and the modern world as distractions from their spiritual pursuits.
That makes sense, given how much emphasis they put on, you know, renunciation and detachment.
Right.
But I imagine it's pretty hard to, like, completely escape the influence of the modern world.
Yeah.
Even in, like, remote areas.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Even the most isolated sadhus might encounter, you know, tourists or pilgrims who bring with them, you know, the trappings of modern life.
Right, exactly.
And then there are sadhus who have embraced certain aspects of modernity.
Right.
Like they use technology to spread their teachings or connect with a wider audience.
So there's kind of a spectrum
Yeah.
of how sadhus are engaging with the modern world. Some resisting it, some, like, integrating it.
Right, and it's creating some fascinating dynamics within the sadhu community.
Oh, how so?
Well, some traditionalists, they worry about the erosion of those ancient values and practices. They fear that, you know, the pursuit of social media fame or material wealth might corrupt the true essence of the sadhu path.
I see. Yeah, that's a valid concern.
Right.
Especially given how much emphasis they place on, you know, renunciation and detachment from all that.
Right. But isn't it possible that technology can also be a tool for good?
Yeah.
A way to spread their message of peace and compassion to a wider audience.
Exactly, and that's kind of what I was thinking.
Right, and that's what some modern sadhus are doing.
Okay.
They're using social media platforms to share their teachings, connect with followers, and even raise awareness about social issues.
So it's like they're taking their ancient wisdom and making it relevant to a contemporary audience.
They're bridging that gap between the ancient and the modern.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
But it's not without its challenges, I imagine.
You're right. There are challenges.
Like what?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is maintaining authenticity. In a world that's, you know, saturated with images and information.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a risk of the sadhu tradition becoming, like, commodified or sensationalized.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with, you know, the rise of spiritual tourism.
Yeah, people might be drawn to the, you know, more exotic, visually striking aspects of the sadhu lifestyle.
Yeah.
Without really understanding, the deeper meaning,
Exactly.
spiritual significance behind it all.
And it raises those ethical questions about exploitation and cultural appropriation. Are some sadhus performing extreme practices for the benefit of tourists rather than for their own genuine spiritual growth?
Right. It's a complex issue.
It is. It really blurs the lines.
It does.
And it makes you think about, how our own perceptions and expectations
can influence how these traditions are, presented and perceived.
It's like a two-way street.
Exactly.
We as observers have a responsibility to approach these traditions with respect.
Right.
And a genuine desire to understand.
Absolutely.
Rather than just seeking, entertainment or some exotic experience.
It's about going deeper.
Yeah, it's a reminder that cultural sensitivity and critical thinking are so important.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where information travels so fast.
Right.
And it's easy to, form those superficial judgments.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that the Sadhu tradition is not a monolithic entity.
Right.
There are diverse perspectives and practices within this community, just like any other religious or spiritual tradition.
So it's not about making sweeping generalizations or judgments, but really approaching each individual and their practices with an open mind and a willingness to learn.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most valuable takeaways from this whole deep dive.
Yeah. It's challenged us to, confront our own biases, to expand our understanding of spirituality, and to appreciate that enduring power of these ancient traditions in, a rapidly changing world.
It's definitely been a thought-provoking journey.
It has.
And I feel like I've only just scratched the surface.
Me too.
There's so much more to explore and learn about the Sadhu tradition.
Yeah, it's a deep well of wisdom.
It is. So for our listeners who are now, completely fascinated by the Sadhus just as we are, where can they go to learn more?
Well, there are some excellent books and documentaries out there that delve deeper into, the history, the philosophy, the practices of the Sadhu tradition. And, of course, responsible travel to India with a, respectful and open-minded approach can offer a first-hand glimpse into this extraordinary world.
It sounds like an adventure worth taking.
It is.
But even without, hopping on a plane to India, I feel like we can all take a piece of the Sadhu wisdom with us.
Absolutely.
Their emphasis on self-discipline, inner peace, detachment from those material desires.
Right.
It holds valuable lessons for everyone, regardless of, your spiritual beliefs or anything.
I think that's true.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of the Sadhus, let's leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
If these Sadhus can find enlightenment through pain, what does that say about the role of suffering in our own lives?
It's a profound question.
It is.
And one that each listener can explore for themselves.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's not about seeking out pain, but rather about finding meaning and growth in the challenges that life inevitably throws our way.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of difficulty, there's always an opportunity for transformation and awakening.
I like that.
And with that, we'll leave you to continue your own deep dive into the fascinating world of the Sadhus.
Keep exploring.
Until next time.
Keep questioning.
Keep exploring. Keep questioning.
And keep seeking.
And keep seeking.
Yes.